The message came at midnight Earth Standard Time. Every screen on every human world flickered at the same moment. Television broadcasts stopped. Music streams went silent. Even the quiet hum of personal devices paused as something forced its way through every communication channel. Humanity possessed. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was sitting in her cabin aboard the diplomatic vessel Olive Branch when it happened. She had been reading an old paper book, a habit she had picked up from her grandmother. The pages were yellow with age, and the smell of them reminded her of home. When her screen lit up with an alien face, she did not jump. She simply placed a small ribbon between the pages and closed the book. The face on the screen was not pleasant to look at. It belonged to a creature that resembled an insect, but larger and more terrible than any insect Earth had ever produced. Its head was covered in a hard shell of deep purple, and its eyes were black pools that reflected no light. When it spoke, its mandibles clicked together in a way that made a sound like bones breaking. I am High Archon HFY of the Valkyrie Dominion, the creature said. The translation came through clearly, though the original sounds beneath it were harsh and alien. I speak now to the species called humanity. Elena watched calmly around her. She knew that billions of humans were watching the same broadcast on Earth, on Mars, on the 12 star systems that humanity called home. Children were being pulled from their beds by worried parents. Workers stopped in the middle of their shifts. Soldiers reached for weapons they had never fired in combat. 3,000 years ago, your kind crawled out of your single planet and entered the galaxy. Thus continued, you were given space to live by the galactic conquered. You were tolerated, you were watched, and you have been judged. The High Archon leaned closer to whatever device was recording him. His black eyes seemed to stare directly at Elena, though she knew he was staring at everyone. The Valkyrie Dominion has awakened from its long sleep. We have studied the galaxy and found it soft, weak, full of species who have forgotten what strength means. We have already consumed 16 of these weak species. Their worlds are now our worlds. Their people are now our servants, or they are dead. Elena heard footsteps in the corridor outside her cabin. Her staff was gathering, waiting for her orders. She did not move. We have studied humanity, HFY said. We have watched your worlds for many of your years. We have seen your lack of weapons. We have seen your lack of warships. We have seen that you possess nothing that could stop even the smallest of our fleets. This was true. Elena knew, at least it appeared to be true. Human space was remarkably empty of military vessels. Their planets had no visible defense platforms. Their stations carried no weapons. For 3,000 years, humanity had been the quietest member of the galactic conquered. They traded fairly. They kept to themselves. They never threatened anyone. The other species of the galaxy had decided long ago that humans were simply not a threat. They were too short-lived, too emotional, too focused on their own internal matters. The elder species, some of whom had existed for millions of years, looked at humanity the way an adult might look at a child playing with toys. You have one solar cycle to respond, HFY announced. You will surrender all 12 of your star systems to the Valkyrie Dominion. You will present yourselves for judgment. Those we find useful will serve us. Those we do not will be eliminated. The High Archon's mandibles clicked Together in what might have been I. Smile, if you do not surrender, we will. Come for you anyway, our armada numbers 1 billion ships. Your species will be erased from the galaxy, and no one will remember you ever existed. The screen went dark for a long moment. Elena sat in silence. She could hear her staff talking urgently outside her door. She could imagine the panic spreading across human space, parents holding their children, leaders calling emergency meetings, people looking up at the stars and wondering if death was coming from somewhere out there in the black. She stood up and walked to her door. When she opened it, she found 7 people waiting for her. They were her senior staff, the best diplomatic minds humanity had produced. Right now they all looked terrified. Ambassador said, her chief of staff, a young man named Thomas Chen, his face was pale. We need to contact Earth Command immediately. We need to coordinate with the conquered. We need to do nothing of the sort, Elena said calmly. The staff stared at her. Ambassador, did you not hear the broadcast? They have 1 billion ships. They have already destroyed 16 species. They are coming for us. Elena smiled. It was a strange smile. Thomas thought, not the smile of a woman who was afraid, not the smile of a woman who was trying to hide her fear. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for something for a very long time, and that something had finally arrived. I heard the broadcast, Elena said. Now I need to send a reply. Come with me to the communications room. They followed her through the corridors of the Olive Branch. The ship was not large, only a diplomatic vessel meant for peaceful meetings with other species. It had no weapons, no armor, no military systems of any kind. It was exactly the kind of ship that the Valkyrie would expect humans to have. In the communications room, Elena sat down at the main console. Her staff gathered around her, watching nervously. Ambassador, Thomas said carefully, what exactly are you planning to say? 2 words, Elena replied. She typed them into the system and set the message to broadcast on all frequencies directed at the source of the Valkyrie transmission. Then she pressed send. Message read, come then. Thomas felt his blood go cold. Ambassador, with respect, have you lost your mind? You just challenged a species with 1 billion warships to attack us. We have nothing. We cannot fight them. We cannot. Thomas. Elena interrupted gently. How old are you? 4, Ambassador. And how long have humans been part of the galactic conquered? 3,000 years. In all that time, have you ever wondered why humanity has no visible military, no warships, no weapons platforms? Thomas frowned. Because we are a peaceful species. We learned from our violent past. We chose to be better. Elena's smile grew wider. That is what we tell everyone. That is what the conquered believes. That is what the Valkyrie believe. She stood up and looked at her staff. But it is not the truth. She walked to a window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valkyrie armada was preparing to move. Somewhere out there, 1 billion warships were being readied for the destruction of humanity. 3,000 years ago, when we first left Earth and met the other species of the galaxy, we learned something important. Elena said, we learned that the galaxy is not a safe place. We learned that peace is not guaranteed. We learned that someday something like the Valkyrie would come for us. She turned back to face her staff. So we prepared. Thomas shook his head. Prepared how? I have worked in the Diplomatic corps for 10 years, I have. Seen our fleet records, we have trading. Vessels, transport ships, exploration. Craft, nothing that could fight a war. You have seen what we wanted you to see. Alina said what we wanted everyone to. See, for 3,000 years humanity has shown the galaxy a mask. The mask of a peaceful, harmless, slightly primitive species that poses no threat to anyone. Behind that mask we have been building. She pressed a button on the communications console. A new screen appeared showing a symbol that Thomas had never seen before. It was a simple image, a human skull with 2 cross swords behind it. This is the seal of the grave fleets, Alina said. They have been hidden for 3,000 years, waiting for this moment, waiting for someone to be foolish enough to attack us. Grave fleets, Thomas whispered. Name for what? They will create, Alina said. Graves. Many, many graves, but not ours. Across human space, as Alina spoke to her staff, other conversations were happening on Earth. In a chamber buried deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, the leaders of humanity's true military gathered around a table made of black stone. They were men and women who had trained their entire lives for a war that might never come. Now it had come, and they were ready. On Mars, in a facility that appeared on no map and existed in no official record, Admiral Kenji Tanaka received a single coded message. The message contained only one word: awaken. He walked to a console and entered a sequence of codes that had been passed down through his family for generations. His great-great-grandmother had been one of the first admirals of the grave fleets. His grandfather had commanded the 3rd Fleet during a training exercise that had involved more firepower than most species had used in their entire histories. Now it was his turn. Begin activation sequence, he said. Quietly, around him, lights began to turn on. Screens that had been dark for decades flickered to life. Systems that had been sleeping woke up, and in the vast caverns beneath the Martian surface, something enormous began to stir. In the space between dimensions, where normal physics did not apply, the first grave fleet received its orders. 10,000 ships that had been waiting in silence for 3,000 years powered up their engines. Their crews, who had been living in virtual reality simulations that felt like real life, were pulled back into their physical bodies. Their weapons, which used technologies that the rest of the galaxy did not know existed, came online. The commander of the 1st Fleet was a woman named Sarah Park. She was 230 years old, kept alive by technologies that humanity had not shared with the galaxy. She had been waiting for this day since she was a young officer, fresh from the academy. All ships report status, she said. 10,000 voices responded. 10,000 ships confirmed they were ready, set course for Proxima Centauri. Sarah ordered, the enemy will come there first. We will be waiting for them. The 1st grave fleet moved through dimensions that other species did not know existed, traveling faster than any ship the galaxy had ever seen. They emerged in the Proxima Centauri system, spreading out in formations that had been perfected over thousands of simulated battles, and they waited back on the olive branch. Alina's staff was still trying to process what they had learned. How is this possible? Thomas asked. How could we hide an entire military for 3,000 years? The other species have been watching us. They have spies, sensors, detection systems, all of which we help Design, Alina said, humanity has been involved in the Concord's technical system since we joined. We made sure there were certain things those systems could not detect. But why hide? Why pretend to be weak? Alelena's expression grew serious. Because we remember what we are, Thomas. We remember our history, the wars, the violence, the cruelty. Humanity spent thousands of years learning how to kill each other. We became very, very good at it. She sat down heavily in a chair. When we reached the stars, we had a choice. We could continue being what we had always been, warriors, conquerors, killers, or we could try to be something better. We could try to be peaceful. So we chose peace, Thomas said. We chose to try, Alina corrected, but we are not fools. We knew that peace only works if everyone agrees to it. We knew that someday someone would not agree. Someday someone would come for us, and when that day came, we needed to be ready. She looked at her staff with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than her face. The Valkyrie think they have found a weak species to consume. They think we are prey. They have made a terrible mistake. We are not prey. We have never been prey. We are simply predators who chose to stop hunting. Her smile returned, but now Thomas could see the steel behind it. The Valkyrie have just reminded us what we are, and they are going to regret it. In the Valkyrie command ship far across the galaxy, High Archon Zethrix received humanity's reply. 2 words appeared on his screen: come. Then his advisors were confused. This was not the response they had expected. Every other species they had threatened had begged for mercy. They had offered tribute. They had pleaded for time. No one had ever simply invited the Valkyrie to attack. Perhaps they do not understand what we are, one advisor suggested. Perhaps they are too primitive to recognize the threat. Perhaps Zethic agreed. It does not matter. Send the Vanguard fleet to their nearest system, Proxima Centauri, 10,000 ships. Burn everything you find. Leave no survivors. Let the rest of their species see what happens to those who defy us. The advisor bowed and left to carry out the order. Zethrix looked at the human reply one more time. 2 words. Come then. Such confidence from such a small species, such arrogance from creatures who had no weapons. He deleted the message and returned to planning the conquest of human space. This would be easy, he thought. Humanity would fall within a month. Their worlds would become Valkyrie colonies. Their people would become Valkyrie slaves. He could not have been more wrong. In the Proxima Centauri system, the first Gray Fleet waited. Silence. Sarah Park sat in her command chair watching her screens. Somewhere out there the Valkyrie Vanguard was coming, 10,000 enemy ships, expecting to find helpless civilians. All ships, she said calmly, prepare for combat. Remember your training. Remember what we fight for. Remember that today we show the galaxy what humanity really is. She thought of Earth, blue and green and beautiful. She thought of the billions of humans spread across 12-star systems. She thought of the children who were sleeping right now, unaware that their entire future depended on what happened in the next few hours. Today, she said, the peace ends not because we wanted it to, but because someone forced us to remember who we are. Her finger hovered over the button that would begin the battle, and we are very good at war. The stars were silent. The void was cold, and somewhere in the darkness between systems, a billion Valkyrie ships were moving toward their doom. They just did not know it yet. The 3,000-year peace was over. Humanity was awake. The Valkyrie Vanguard fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. At the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, 10,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons that had burned worlds and shattered civilizations. Commander Vexnar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Devourer, and looked at the small human colony ahead. Scan the system, he ordered, his sensors. Operator worked quickly. Commander, I am detecting one habitable world. Population approximately 2 million. Humans, no military vessels, no defense platforms, no weapon signatures of any kind. Vexnar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. This was exactly what they had expected. The humans were as helpless as the intelligence reports had promised. This would not be a battle, it would be an execution. Move the fleet into attack formation, he commanded. Begin bombardment as soon as we are in range. Leave nothing alive. 10,000 Valkyrie ships began to move. They spread out across the darkness of space like a swarm of locusts preparing to devour a field, their weapons powered up, glowing with the terrible energy that had ended 16 species. In an hour, maybe less, the human colony would be nothing but ash and memory. On the planet below, 2 million humans looked up at the sky and waited. They did not run. They did not panic. They had been told what was coming, and they had been told to trust. In the grave fleets, Vexnar watched the planet grow larger on his screen. Such a small world, such a small species. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Commander, his sensors operator said. Suddenly, I am detecting something strange. What is it? There is a disturbance in space. Multiple disturbances. They are appearing all around the fleet. Vexnar frowned. Explain. Before the operator could answer, the first human ship appeared. It emerged from nothing, unfolding from a point in space that had been empty moment before. It was black, so black that it seemed to swallow the light around it. Its shape was angular and sharp, like a blade designed for killing. It was not as large as a Valkyrie warship, but something about it felt dangerous in a way that Vexnar had never experienced before. Then another ship appeared, and another, and another. In the space of 30 seconds, 10,000 human warships emerged from dimensional pockets that the Valkyrie did not know existed. They surrounded the Vanguard fleet completely, cutting off any possibility of retreat. What is this? Vexnar whispered. On the bridge of the first Grave Fleet flagship, the Silent Fury, Admiral Sarah Park smiled. Open a channel to the enemy, commander, she ordered. Her communications officer worked quickly. Channel open, Admiral. Valkyrie Fleet, Sarah said calmly. This is Admiral Sarah Park of the Human Grave Fleets. You have entered our space with hostile intent. You have threatened our people. You have one chance to surrender. Take it on the Devourer. Vexnar stared at the human woman on his screen. She was small, soft, looking with hair the color of dark wood and eyes that showed no fear at all. He could not understand where these ships had come from. He could not understand why his sensors had not detected them. He could not understand anything that was happening. Surrender. He said, we are the Valkyrie. We do not surrender. We conquer. Then you die. Sarah replied simply. All ships open fire. The first Grave Fleet had been designed for exactly this moment. For 3,000 years, human scientists and engineers had worked in secret, developing weapons that were centuries beyond anything the galaxy had seen. They had studied every war humanity had ever fought. They had analyzed every battle, every strategy, every tactic. They had fed it all into simulations that had run continuously for millennia, refining and perfecting their methods. The result was devastating. Human weapons did not fire beams or missiles like other species used. They fired something worse. The first wave of attacks ripped through the Valkyrie ship's shields as if they were paper. The shields had been designed to stop known weapons. These weapons were not known. Vexnar watched in horror as the ships around him began to die. A cruiser to his left simply ceased to exist, vaporized by a weapon that left nothing behind. A battleship to his right was cut in half by something invisible, its two pieces spinning away into the void. Everywhere he looked, Valkyrie ships were being destroyed. Return fire, he screamed. All ships return fire. The Valkyrie weapon spoke, pouring energy toward the human fleet, but the human ships were not where they should be. They moved in ways that seemed impossible, sliding through space like shadows, appearing in one place and then another without crossing the distance between. Valkyrie gunners fired at targets that were already gone. In the first 5 minutes, the Valkyrie lost 2,000 ships. Commander, we cannot hit them, his weapons officer reported, terror in his voice. They are too fast. They know where our shots will be before we fire them. This was true. Human tactical computers, developed over 3,000 years, could predict enemy fire patterns with near-perfect accuracy. The human ships knew exactly where the Valkyrie would shoot, and they simply were not there when the shots arrived. Battle, if it could be called a battle, lasted 11 minutes. At the end of those 11 minutes, the Valkyrie Vanguard fleet no longer existed. 10,000 warships had been reduced to scattered debris, floating in the darkness of space. Not a single Valkyrie vessel had survived. Not a single human ship had been lost. Admiral Sarah Park looked at the destruction on her screens and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. This was what humanity had been preparing for. This was why they had hidden themselves for so long, not because they were afraid, because they wanted the enemy to come to them. Confident and unprepared, send a message to Admiral Tanaka, she ordered. Tell him the Vanguard has been eliminated. 0 losses on our side, deep beneath Mars. Admiral Kenji Tanaka received the message. He was standing in a command center that stretched for miles beneath the red surface, surrounded by screens showing information from across human space. Around him, officers worked at consoles coordinating the awakening of military assets that had been dormant for centuries. Excellent, he said when he read the report. The first test is complete. Now we prepare for the real battle. He walked to a massive screen that showed the galaxy somewhere out there. The main Valkyrie armada was still moving toward human space. 900,000 warships. The Vanguard had been nothing compared to what was coming. Status of the other fleets, he said. Second Fleet is fully operational. An officer reported. Third Fleet will be ready within 6 hours. Fourth Fleet needs 12 hours. Fifth Fleet is en route to the secondary objective. Good. Tanaka turned to face his command staff. Ladies and gentlemen, today begins the first war. Humanity has fought against an external enemy. Let me be clear about what is at stake. If we fail, our species dies. Our worlds burn. Everything we have built in 3,000 years is destroyed. Failure is not acceptable. He pointed at the screen, showing the galaxy. For 3,000 years we have maintained the doctrine of quiet. Preparation, we have hidden our strength. We have let the galaxy think we are harmless. We have done this because we learned from our history. War is not something to seek. Violence is not something to celebrate. Peace is always preferable. His voice hardened. But when peace is not possible, when an enemy forces war upon us, we must be ready to fight, and we must fight to win, not just to survive, to win so completely that no one ever thinks about attacking us again. He turned back to the screens. The Valkyrie have awakened something they do not understand. They see our size and think we are weak. They see our peaceful history and think we have forgotten how to fight. They have studied our visible capabilities and found nothing threatening. A thin smile crossed his face. They have made the mistake that predators always make. They assumed that because the prey was not fighting back, the prey could not fight back. They forgot that sometimes the prey is actually another predator, one that has simply chosen not to hunt. He raised his hand and pointed at the tactical display. Show them what happens when humanity chooses to hunt again. Across the galaxy, the news of Proxima Centauri spread like fire. In the chambers of the galactic conquered, thousands of alien species received the reports with disbelief. The Valkyrie Vanguard, 10,000 warships that could have conquered most individual species, had been destroyed in 11 minutes by humans, by the quiet, peaceful, primitive humans who had no military. This is impossible, said the ambassador from the Thessan Empire, a species of tall, blue-skinned beings who had considered themselves superior to humanity for millennia. Our intelligence shows that humans have no warships, no weapons, nothing that could. Your intelligence was wrong, interrupted the ambassador from the Chris Collective, an ancient race of beings made of living crystal, or rather, your intelligence saw what the humans wanted you to see. The Thessan ambassador shook his head. That cannot be. We have watched them for 3,000 years. We have monitored their communications, their manufacturing, their scientific research. There is no evidence of any military development. Then how do you explain Proxima Centauri? The Thessan had no answer. In a private chamber away from the main hall, the oldest members of the conquered gathered. These were beings who had lived for millions of years, who had seen species rise and fall across countless generations. They had watched humanity join the conquered 3,000 years ago, and they had made their judgments. Then we were wrong, said the eldest of them, a being of pure energy known only as the first light. We looked at human history and saw violence, chaos, self-destruction. We assumed they were primitive. We assumed they were dangerous only to themselves. We did not consider another possibility. What possibility? Asked another elder. That they knew exactly what they were, that they understood their own capacity for violence better than we did, and that they deliberately chose to suppress it while preparing for the day when they would need it again. The first lights energy flickered in a pattern that indicated deep concern. We have been watching a species of apex predators pretend to be harmless herbivores, and now the pretense is over. On the Valkyrie home world, High Archon Zethrix received the news of the Vanguard's destruction. He did not believe it at first. He demanded confirmation, then demanded it. Again, when he finally accepted that it was true, his first emotion was not fear, it was rage. They killed 10,000 of my ships, he said quietly. They killed my warriors. They dare to resist. The Valkyrie Dominion, his advisors, waited nervously. They had never seen the High Archon this angry. Send the main armada, Zethers commanded. All 900,000 ships. I want every human world burned to ash. I want their species erased from existence. I want nothing left of them but a warning to anyone else who thinks they can defy us. High Archon, one advisor said carefully. Perhaps we should reconsider. If they destroyed the Vanguard so easily, the Vanguard was overconfident, Z3 snapped. They were caught by surprise. That will not happen again. Send the main armada now. The advisor bowed and left to carry out the order. 900,000 Valkyrie warships began to move toward human space. It was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years. It was the force that had conquered 16 species. It was the hammer that would crush humanity into dust, or so Zethrix believed. Back in human space, the grave fleets continued to awaken. Admiral Tanaka watched the reports coming in from across the 12-star systems. Shipyards that had been disguised as mining facilities revealed their true purpose, weapons platforms that had been hidden inside asteroids, powered up training centers that had existed in virtual reality became operational in the real world. How many ships do we have in total? Asked one of his officers. Tanaka checked his screens, active and ready for combat. Currently 50,000. By the time the main Valkyrie armada arrives, we will have 200,000. That is still less than a quarter of their force. Numbers are not everything, Tanaka replied. Our ships are more advanced. Our weapons are more powerful. Our crews have been training in perfect simulations for generations, and most importantly, we have been planning for this exact scenario for 3,000 years. He pulled up a tactical display showing the projected path of the Valkyrie armada. They will enter our space here at the Kepler's Veil region. It is the most direct route to our core systems. They will expect us to try to stop them there, so they will be prepared for a battle. He smiled coldly. We will give them one, but not the battle they expect. In her cabin aboard the Silent Fury, Admiral Sarah Park was reviewing the after-action reports from Proxima Centauri. Her crews had performed perfectly. Not a single human life had been lost. The enemy had been eliminated with surgical precision, but she felt no joy, only grim necessity. She had studied human history extensively. She knew what her species was capable of. She knew the wars, the atrocities, the countless millions who had died at human hands throughout Earth's blood-soaked past. That capacity for violence had not disappeared when humanity reached the stars. It had simply been locked away, hidden behind a mask of peace. Now the mask was coming off. I hope we can put it back on when this is over, she said quietly to herself. I hope we can remember how to be peaceful again. But first there was a war to win, and humanity was very, very good at winning wars. She rose from her chair and walked to the bridge. Her crew snapped to attention as she entered. Set course for Kepler's Veil, she ordered. Main enemy force is coming. Let's go. Introduce ourselves. The Silent Fury turned and accelerated into the darkness between stars. Behind it, the rest of the first Grave Fleet followed. They were going to meet an armada of 900,000 enemy warships. They were going to destroy it, and the galaxy was going to watch and learn and finally understand what humanity really was. Not victims, not prey, not the weak species that everyone had assumed them to be. They were the children of Earth, the planet that had produced more wars than most species could imagine. They were the descendants of warriors who had learned to fight with sticks and stones and had never stopped improving their methods. They were the quiet neighbors who had been politely asked not to demonstrate their capabilities. Now the demonstration was about to begin, and it would be unforgettable. The Galactic Concord had existed for 50 million years. In that time, its members had witnessed countless events: the birth and death of stars, the rise and fall of empires, wars that had reshaped entire regions of space, but none of them had ever seen anything like what was about to happen at Kepler's Vale. Ambassador Vixthal of the Thessan Empire was sitting in his private viewing chamber when the broadcast began. Humanity had sent an invitation to every species in the Concord. They were going to fight the main Valkyrie armada, and they wanted everyone to watch. This is foolish, Vixthal muttered as he adjusted his screen. Even if they destroyed the Vanguard, they cannot defeat 900,000 ships. They are committing suicide and inviting us to witness it. But he watched anyway, so did billions of others across the galaxy. On every world that had a communication system capable of receiving the broadcast, people stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to Kepler's Vale. The quiet humans, the peaceful humans, the humans who had never shown any military capability, were about to fight for their survival. Most species expected to watch a slaughter. High Archon Zthrix commanded the Valkyrie armada from his personal dreadnought, the World Ender. It was the largest ship in the fleet, a mountain of metal and weapons that had led the conquest of 16 species. From its bridge, Zthrix could see his armada spreading across space like an ocean of death. How long until we reach the human core worlds? He asked. 2 standard cycles, High Archon replied, his navigation officer. We will pass through the Kepler's Vale region, approximately 6 hours, and our scouts report no enemy presence in the region. Correct, High Archon. The humans appear to be gathering their forces closer to their home worlds. They are trying to delay the inevitable. Zthrix clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The destruction of the Vanguard had been a setback, but nothing more. Whatever tricks the humans had used at Proxima Centauri would not work against a force this large. 900,000 warships could not be defeated by surprise. 900,000 warships could not be defeated by anything. Maintain course, he ordered. When we reach their core systems, leave nothing alive. 6 hours later, the Valkyrie armada entered Kepler's Vale. The region was a vast cloud of cosmic dust and debris, the remnants of an ancient stellar explosion. It stretched for light years in every direction, making it difficult to navigate and even more difficult to see clearly. The Valkyrie sensors struggled to penetrate the interference, but they detected nothing hostile. Then the humans appeared. They did not emerge from hiding this time. They simply flew directly toward the Valkyrie fleet, making no attempt at concealment. Admiral Kenji Tanaka had chosen the approach deliberately. He wanted the Valkyrie to see them. Coming, he wanted the galaxy to see them. Coming, all ships, this is Admiral Tanaka, he broadcast on an open channel. That every species in the conquered could hear, we are engaging the enemy. Now, what you are about to witness is not a desperate defense, it is a demonstration. Watch carefully on the World Ender, High Archon HFY studied the approaching human fleet. His sensors counted approximately 200,000 ships. Large by normal standards, but still less than a quarter of his own force. They are outnumbered 4-1, his tactical officer reported. This is not a battle, it is suicide. Then let us grant them the death they seek. Z-Thrix replied, all ships attack formation. Destroy them all. The Valkyrie Armada surged forward, 900,000 ships eager for blood. They had conquered 16 species. With this armada, they had never been defeated. They did not expect to be defeated now. The two fleets met in the heart of Kepler's Veil, and the galaxy watched in the stunned silence. Human ships fought in ways that no one had ever seen before. They moved in perfect coordination, each vessel knowing exactly where every other vessel would be at any moment. They formed patterns that shifted and flowed like water, presenting no stable targets for Valkyrie. Weapons to lock onto, and their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The first weapon humanity revealed was called the Null Lance. It was a beam of energy that did not burn or explode. Instead, it simply delete whatever it touched. Ships hit by the Null Lance ceased to exist, leaving nothing behind. No debris, no radiation, no evidence they had ever been there. The Valkyrie had never seen anything like it. They had no defense against it. The second weapon was called the Cascade. It was a torpedo that when it struck a ship did not explode. Instead, it spread. The cascade would tear through one ship and then jump to the next, and then the next, ripping through clusters of Valkyrie vessels like a disease spreading through a crowd. A single cascade torpedo could destroy dozens of ships before burning out. The third weapon was the most terrifying. The humans called it the Whisper. It was not a beam or a torpedo, it was a signal. When a ship received the Whisper, its computer systems simply stopped working. Navigation failed, weapons went offline. Life support began to shut down. Whisper turned warships into coffins. Floating in space, what is happening? Z-Thry screamed as he watched his fleet begin to die. What weapons are these? Our shields are doing nothing. High Archon, we cannot identify the energy signatures, his science officer replied. Frantically, these weapons are based on principles we do not understand. We have no countermeasures, then make counter measures. Adapt. We are the Valkyrie. We have conquered 16 species. They were not like this species. Tai Archon on the bridge of the second Grave Fleet's flagship, Admiral Tanaka observed the battle with cold precision. His ships were performing exactly as they had in countless simulations. Valkyrie, for all their numbers, had not adapted their tactics in 10,000 years. They fought the same way they had always fought, with overwhelming force and brutal aggression. Humanity had spent 3,000 years developing specific counters to exactly this approach. Status report. Tanaka ordered. Enemy losses approaching 150,000. His operations officer replied. Our losses are 12 ships, 12 ships out of 200,000 against a force of 900,000. Continue the engagement. Tanaka said. But pull back the Third Fleet to cover our flanks. I want them thinking about what else we might have hidden. The battle continued for 6 hours. The Valkyrie threw everything they had at the human fleet. They tried mass charges, hoping to overwhelm with numbers. The humans simply fell back, drawing the charging ships into kill zones where they could be destroyed in concentrated fire. They tried flanking maneuvers, hoping to catch the humans from multiple directions. The humans anticipated every move, repositioning before the flanking forces could reach them. They even tried ramming, sending unmanned ships hurtling toward human vessels in desperation. The humans simply shot them down before they got close, their weapons precise enough to destroy individual ships without wasting ammunition. This is not possible, Ambassador Vixthal whispered as he watched from his viewing chamber. His drink sat forgotten beside him, growing warm. They are toying with them. The humans are not fighting for survival, they are putting on a show. He was right. Admiral Tanaka had designed this battle to be visible. He wanted every species in the galaxy to see exactly what humanity could do. He wanted them to understand that the quiet neighbors they had ignored for 3,000 years were not weak. They had never been weak. After 6 hours, the Valkyrie armada broke. High Archon Zethik screamed orders that no one followed. His ships were fleeing in every direction, trying to escape the human fleet that had become a nightmare of death. Of his 900,000 warships, fewer than 50,000 remained operational. Snorts the rest were destroyed, disabled, or drifting without power. All ships retreat, he finally ordered, his voice raw with desperation. Fall back to home territory. Retreat. Admiral Tanaka watched the enemy fleet scatter. He could have pursued them, hunted them down, destroyed every last ship, but that was not the plan. Let them go, he ordered. We have made our point. He turned to the broadcast system. People of the Galactic Concord, you have just witnessed the Battle of Kepler's Vale. The Valkyrie attacked us with 900,000 ships. Approximately 850,000 of those ships have been destroyed or disabled. Our losses total 94 vessels. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. For 3,000 years humanity has been peaceful. We have traded fairly. We have kept to ourselves. We have not threatened anyone. Many of you assumed this meant we could not fight. You were wrong. We chose peace because we know what we are capable of. We know our history. We know the wars we have fought, the violence we have done, the depths to which we can sink when we choose to be cruel. We chose to be better. We chose to build rather than destroy, to cooperate rather than conquer. But do not mistake our choice for weakness. Theory made that mistake. They paid for it today. Anyone else who makes the same mistake will pay the same price. He ended the broadcast. Across the galaxy, billions of beings sat in stunned silence. They had watched a species they had dismissed as primitive destroy one of the most powerful military forces in existence. They had watched humans fight with weapons and tactics that seemed almost magical in their effectiveness. They had watched the quiet neighbors reveal themselves as something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. In the conquered chambers, the first light spoke for the first time in 1,000 years. We have been fools, it said. We looked at human history and saw chaos. We saw a species constantly at war with itself, unable to find peace. We concluded that they were primitive, dangerous only to themselves, destined to eventually destroy their own civilization. It paused its energy, flickering with something that might have been shame. We did not understand. What we were seeing, human history is not a record of failure, it is a record of practice. Every war they fought against each other was a lesson. Every battle was training. By the time they reached the stars, they had learned more about warfare than species that had existed for millions of years. And then they stopped. They put away their weapons. They chose peace, but they did not forget what they had learned. They simply waited and prepared and hoped that they would never need those lessons again. The first light looked at the other elders of the conquered. The Valkyrie woke them up, and now we must all live with the consequences. On the Valkyrie home world, the survivors of the Battle of Kepler's Veil began to arrive. Less than 50,000 ships from an armada of 900,000, the greatest military force the Dominion had ever assembled, shattered in 6 hours by a species that was not supposed to have any military at all. High Archon Zithrix sat alone in his private chambers, staring at nothing. He had ruled the Valkyrie for 300 years. He had led the conquest of 16 species. He had believed himself invincible. Now he understood the truth. He was not invincible. He was not even particularly powerful. He had simply never faced a real opponent. What have we done? He whispered to himself. What have we awakened? He thought about the human response to his initial threat. 2 words come then. He had thought it was arrogance. He had thought it was the foolish bravado of a species too stupid to understand the danger they faced. Now he understood it was not arrogance, it was invitation. The humans had wanted him to attack. They had prepared for it, planned for it, probably hoped for it. They had spent 3,000 years getting ready for exactly this moment, and he had walked right into their trap. A communication signal interrupted his thoughts. One of his remaining advisors appeared on screen. High Archon, we are receiving reports from our home system. Something has arrived. What has arrived? The advisor's face was pale with fear. Human ships, High Archon, they were already here when we arrived. They are surrounding our home world. Zithrix felt his blood turn cold. While he had been fighting at Kepler's Veil, while his armada was being destroyed, the humans had sent another force to his home. They had bypassed his entire military, crossed the galaxy, and arrived at the heart of the Valkyrie Dominion. They had not just defeated him, they had outplanned him at every step. How many ships? He asked quietly. We cannot get an exact count, High Archon. Our sensors are being jammed, but estimates suggest at least 50,000 vessels, 50,000 ships. More than his remaining fleet, more than enough to destroy every world the Valkyrie possessed. He had declared war on humanity, expecting an easy conquest. Instead, he had doomed his entire species. On the flagship of the 5th Grave Fleet, Admiral Sarah Park looked at the Valkyrie home world. It was a large planet, covered in purple vegetation and dark seas. Billions of Valkyrie lived on its surface. Cities sprawled across every continent. It was the heart of an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, and it was completely at her mercy. Admiral, the enemy fleet remnants are arriving from Kepler's Veil, her tactical officer reported. They are not attempting any hostile action, I think. They know they cannot win, good Sarah. Replied, open a channel to the planet. I want to speak with their High Archon. The channel opened and Sarah found herself looking at the face of the creature who had threatened to exterminate her species. He looked different now. The arrogance was gone. The confidence was gone. All that remained was fear. High Archon HFY. She said calmly, I am Admiral Sarah, Park of the Human Grave Fleets. As you can see, we have arrived at your home world. Your remaining military forces are insufficient to stop us. Your planetary defenses have already been neutralized. Your species is now at our mercy. HFY said nothing. What was there to say? We could destroy you. Sarah continued, we could burn your worlds, kill your people, erase your species from existence. You threatened to do the same to us. Perhaps we should return the favor. She let the words hang in the air, but we are not going to do that. Humanity has learned something that you have not. We have learned that there is no victory in extinction. We have learned that the cycle of violence only ends when someone chooses to break it. You attacked us. You killed our people. You tried to destroy our civilization. For that there must be consequences, but the consequences will not be genocide. She leaned forward. We are offering you terms. Hierarchan. Surrender unconditionally. Release every species you have conquered. Disarm completely except monitoring to ensure you never threaten anyone again. Do this and your species survives. And if we refuse, Sethri asked quietly. Sarah's eyes hardened. Then we do what you plan to do to us, and no one in the galaxy will blame us for it. There was a long silence. Zethus thought about his options. He thought about his pride, his honor, his legacy, and then he thought about the billions of Valkyrie who would die if he chose defiance. We accept your terms, he said finally. The Valkyrie Dominion surrenders. Sarah nodded slowly. A wise choice, High Archon, perhaps the first wise choice you have made in this entire conflict. She ended the transmission and turned to her crew. Contact Admiral Tanaka. Tell him the war is over. We won. The words felt strange. We won. Humanity had just defeated an empire that had conquered 16 species. They had done it in days, not years. They had done it with minimal losses, and yet Sarah felt no joy, only relief in a deep tiredness that seemed to reach into her bones. Now comes the hard part, she murmured to herself. Now we have to remember how to be peaceful again. Across the galaxy, the news spread. War was over. Humanity had won. The 3,000-year peace had ended, and a new peace was beginning. But this time, everyone understood who was really keeping the peace, and they were very, very careful not to disturb it. The surrender of the Valkyrie Dominion was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species in the conquered watched as High Archon HFY, the conqueror of 16 civilizations, formally submitted to human authority. It was a moment that changed everything. The balance of power that had existed for millions of years shifted in an instant. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had traveled with the 5th Grave Fleet specifically for this moment. She was not a military officer. She was a diplomat trained in the art of negotiation and understanding. Admiral Tanaka had insisted that she be present. For the surrender, we need someone who can speak to them without threatening them, he had said. Someone who can explain why we are doing this. Now she stood in the grand hall of the Valkyrie. Capital surrounded by alien architecture that seemed designed to intimidate. The ceiling rose hundreds of feet above her, covered in carvings that depicted Valkyrie victories across the centuries. The walls were lined with trophies taken from conquered species, weapons, artifacts, the bones of enemy leaders. It was a monument to violence and domination, and in the center of it, all High Archon Zethix sat on a throne, made from the shells of his ancestors, looking like a creature who had lost everything. The formal terms have been transmitted to your government, Alelina said calmly, but I wanted to speak with you personally, High Archon. I wanted to answer any questions you might have. Seth's black eyes fixed on her. Even defeated, even broken, there was something dangerous in that gaze. The instincts of a predator did not disappear simply because the predator had lost a fight. I have one question, he said, only one. Ask it. Why? Alelina tilted her head. You will need to be more specific. Why did you attack us? You are peaceful. Everyone knows this. For 3,000 years you have been peaceful. You could have surrendered. You could have negotiated. You could have fled. Instead, you fought. You destroyed our armada. You came to our home world. Why, Elena? Consider the question carefully. It deserved a real answer, because you did not give us a choice, she said finally. You came to us with threats of extinction. You told us to surrender or die. That is not negotiation. That is not diplomacy. That is the behavior of someone who only understands one language: violence. She began to walk slowly around the hall, looking at the trophies on the walls. 3,000 years ago, when humanity first left Earth and entered the galaxy, we made a decision. We looked at our history, at the countless wars we had fought, at the millions of our own people we had killed, and we decided that we did not want to be that species anymore. We wanted to be better, so we chose peace. We put away our weapons. We stopped building warships. We focused on trade, on cooperation, on building relationships with other species. We became the quiet neighbors that everyone ignored. She stopped in front of a display case containing the skull of some alien creature, a trophy from one of the Valkyrie conquests. But we never forgot what we were, she continued. We never forgot that peace requires everyone to agree to it. We knew that someday someone would come who did not want peace, someone who only understood violence, and when that day came, we needed to be ready. So while we showed the galaxy a peaceful face, we prepared. We built weapons in secret. We trained soldiers in hidden facilities. We developed technologies that no one else could match. We did this for 3,000 years, hoping we would never need to use any of it. She turned back to face Zethix. And then you came. You sent us a message threatening extermination. You gave us one solar cycle to surrender. You did not even pretend to negotiate. You just assumed we would submit or die. You forced us to remember what we are. You forced us to bring out the weapons we had hoped to never use. You forced us to become once again the violent species that we had tried so hard to move beyond. Her voice hardened slightly. We did not want this war, High Archon, but you gave us no choice, and once we were forced to fight, we fought to win. Because that is what humanity does. When we commit to something, we commit completely. When we fight, we fight until it is over. Zethix was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter than before. We studied your species. We examined your history, your capabilities, your military assets, everything we found. Told us you were weak. You had no weapons, you had no warships, you had nothing that could threaten us. We saw what you wanted us to see, Alina replied. That was the point, but how? How did you hide so much for so long? Our intelligence services are the best in the galaxy. We have infiltrated every species in the conquered. We know secrets that governments do not know they are keeping. How did you fool us? Alina smiled slightly. It was the same smile she had worn when she received the Valkyrie declaration of war, the smile of someone who knows something that no one else has figured out yet. Humanity has been practicing deception since before we could write, she said. It is one of our oldest skills. We learned to lie to each other millions of years ago, and we have been perfecting it ever since. We lie to our enemies, we lie to our allies, we lie to ourselves. We are perhaps the most dishonest species in the galaxy, but there is one thing we do not lie about: our commitment to those we love, our families, our friends, our people. When they are threatened, when they are in danger, all the lies fall away, and what remains is the truth of what we are. She stepped closer to Thrix. You threatened our families, you threatened our children, you said you would exterminate us, and so we stopped lying. We showed you the truth, and the truth is this: humanity is not a peaceful species pretending to be dangerous. We are a dangerous species pretending to be peaceful. Thrix absorbed this information. His mandibles clicked together slowly, a sign of deep thought in his species. I understand now, he said finally. I understand why you won. It is not just because your weapons were better or your tactics were superior. It is because we fundamentally misunderstood what you are. Yes, we thought you were prey that had wandered into our hunting ground. We did not realize you were another predator, one that had simply chosen to stop hunting. Exactly, and when we attacked you, when we threatened your survival, we reminded you that you were a predator. We woke the hunter inside you. Elelena nodded. We call it the dragon. Every human carries it inside them, that ancient part of ourselves that knows how to kill, how to survive, how to fight without mercy. Most of the time we keep the dragon sleeping. We control it with laws, with civilization, with the conscious choice to be something better than our instincts. But when someone threatens what we love, the dragon wakes up, and when the dragon is awake, we are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. She gestured at the trophies around them. You have conquered 16 species. High Archon, you have filled this hall with the remains of civilizations you destroyed, but none of those species were like us. None of them had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to kill each other. None of them had practiced war for millions of years before they even left their home world. We are different. We are the product of a world that tried very hard to kill us, and we survived by becoming very good at killing back. That is not something we are proud of. It is simply what we are. Thrix considered this. If what you say is true, then why did you not conquer the galaxy yourselves when you first arrived in the conquered? You had 3,000 years to prepare. You could have built your fleets openly. You could have taken whatever you wanted. Why did you choose to hide? Because we did not want to be conquerors, Alina said. We looked at our history and saw enough conquest, enough empire, enough domination. we decided that we would try something different. We would try to be good neighbors instead of aggressive ones. Also, we were not sure we could control ourselves. The dragon is dangerous not just to our enemies but to us. Once it wakes up, it is hard to put back to sleep. History has taught us that the easiest way to stay peaceful is to never start fighting in the first place. She sighed. You took that choice away from us. You forced us to fight, and now we have to hope that we can remember how to be peaceful again. We have to hope that the dragon will go back to sleep. Will it? Elelina was silent for a moment. I do not know, she admitted. That is one of the things that frightens me most about this war. Not that we might lose, but that winning might change us into something we do not want to be. She looked directly at Thrix. That is why we are offering you terms instead of extermination, not because we cannot destroy you, we can, but because if we do, we become the monsters we have spent 3,000 years trying not to be. We become just another conquering species, another empire built on corpses. We want to prove to ourselves more than anyone else that we can win a war without losing our souls, that we can defeat an enemy without becoming enemies of ourselves. Zus was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Some of the arrogance had returned, but it was mixed with something new. Respect, perhaps, or at least understanding. You are a strange species, he said. You have the power to rule the galaxy, but you choose not to. You defeat your enemies, then spare them. You fight with terrible weapons, then speak of peace and souls. I do not understand you. I do not think I ever will, but I am beginning to understand why we lost. Why? Ililina asked. Because we fought you thinking you were like the other species we had conquered. We thought you would break under pressure, submit to overwhelming force, accept your fate as prey. We did not realize that you are not prey at all. You are predators who have chosen to be civilized, and when we attacked, when we threatened your existence, we forced you to make a choice: remain civilized and die, or become predators again and live. You chose to live, and you proved that your civilization did not make you weak. It only made you more patient, more thoughtful, more prepared. When you finally struck, you struck with 3,000 years of preparation behind you. He lowered his head in something that might have been a bow. I acknowledge your superiority, ambassador, not just in weapons but in wisdom. We have much to learn from humanity. Ililina accepted the gesture with grace, and perhaps we have things to learn from you as well. Once the terms are fulfilled, once they conquered species are freed and your weapons are removed, perhaps there can be a different relationship between our peoples, not conqueror and conquered, but something better. Is that truly possible? I do not know, Elena admitted. But I hope so. I have to hope so. Because if we cannot find a way to turn enemies into something else, if the only options are destruction or eternal conflict, then what is the point of being civilized at all? She extended her hand towards ethics. It was a human gesture, one that he probably did not understand, but he seemed to sense its meaning. The terms will be enforced. She said that is not negotiable, but how we move forward from here, what kind of future we build, that is something we can decide together if you are willing. ZTH looked at her hand for a long moment, then slowly he reached out with one of his own limbs and touched it. I am willing to try, he said. It was not Forgiveness, it was not friendship. It was simply a beginning, a tiny step, towards something that might someday become better. Outside the hall, Admiral Sarah Park waited with an honor guard of human Marines. When Alina emerged, Sarah studied her face carefully. How did it go? Better than expected, Alina said. He understands now. I think he truly understands. Does that make a difference? I hope so. Alina looked up at the alien sky, purple and strange. I hope we have not started something that we cannot stop. I hope we can put the dragon back to sleep. Sarah was quiet for a moment. The fleets are ready to return to dormant status whenever you give the word. The crews are tired. They want to go back to their normal lives. So do I, Alina said. So does everyone. I think no one wanted this war, but it happened, and now we have to deal with the aftermath. She began walking toward the shuttle that would take her back to the Fifth Fleet. Send a message to Admiral Tanaka. Tell him the terms have been accepted. Tell him to begin the process of demobilization, and tell him. She paused, searching for the right words. Tell him that I hope this is the last time we ever need the grave fleets. Tell him that I hope we can go back to being the quiet neighbors again. Sarah nodded. I will tell him. They boarded the shuttle and rose into the alien sky, leaving behind a world that had been humbled, an empire that had been broken, and a future that no one could predict. The war was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. On the Valkyrie home world, High Archon Zethric sat alone in his throne room, surrounded by the trophies of his past conquests. Soon, those trophies would be returned to the species they had been taken from. Soon, his empire would be dismantled, his fleet would be destroyed, his power would be nothing but memory. And yet, for the first time in his long life, he felt something other than the desire to conquer. He felt curiosity. He felt wonder. He felt a strange desire to understand these impossible creatures who had defeated him so completely. Humanity, the violent species that chose peace, the predators who became civilized, the dragons who slept until someone was foolish enough to wake them. He had thought he understood power. He had thought he understood strength. Now, he realized that he had understood nothing at all. True strength was not the ability to destroy. True strength was the ability to choose not to destroy. True power was not domination, but restraint. The humans had that strength, they had that power, and they had used it to spare his people even after everything he had done to threaten theirs. What strange creatures, he murmured to himself. What terrifying, wonderful, impossible creatures. And somewhere deep inside him, in a place he had not known existed, something that might have been admiration began to grow. 1 year after the surrender of the Valkyrie Dominion, the galaxy looked very different. The 16 species that had been conquered by the Valkyrie were free again. Their worlds had been returned to them. Their people, those who had survived as slaves, were being helped to rebuild their civilizations. Human ships carried supplies to planets that had been stripped bare. Human engineers worked alongside alien counterparts to restore infrastructure that had been destroyed decades ago. Human teachers helped children who had grown up knowing nothing but servitude understand that they could be something more. It was not charity, it was responsibility. Humanity had broken the Valkyrie Dominion, and with that breaking came the obligation to repair what the Dominion had destroyed. Ambassador Alina Vasquez traveled constantly during that year. She visited world after world, meeting with leaders of species that had been written off as extinct. Some of them welcomed her with gratitude, others viewed her with suspicion, wondering if humanity was simply replacing one conqueror with another. She answered their questions patiently, explained the terms under which human assistance was being provided, and promised that when the rebuilding was complete, humanity would step back. We are not here to rule you, she told the survivors of the HFY, a species of crystalline beings whose home world had been turned into a mining operation by the Valkyrie. We are here to help you stand on your own. Again, when you are ready, we will leave. Why? Asked the eldest of the HFY, her body cracked and dimmed by decades of forced labor. Why help us? We have nothing to offer you. We are broken because it is the right thing to do, Elelina replied simply, and because we hope that someday, if we are ever broken, someone will help us too. It was a strange answer for a species that had just proven itself to be the most powerful military force in the galaxy. But it was an honest one. In the conquered chambers, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. Before the war, humanity had been dismissed as a minor species, barely worth noticing. Now, every ambassador in the chamber was acutely aware that the human delegation could, if it chose, destroy any of their civilizations, but the humans did not act like conquerors. They did not demand tribute or special privileges. They did not threaten or intimidate. They simply returned to their seats in the minor species section and continued attending meetings as they always had. It confused many of the elder species, the first light, the oldest and wisest being in the conquered, finally approached the human ambassador directly. I do not understand your behavior, it admitted. You have proven yourselves to be the most powerful species in the galaxy. By our customs, by our history, by every precedent we have established over 50 million years, you should be claiming leadership of the conquered. You should be demanding recognition of your status. Why are you not doing this, Elena? Consider the question. Because we do not want to lead the galaxy. We did not fight this war for power or territory. We fought because we had no choice. Now that the fighting is over, we want to go back to what we were before, peaceful neighbors who keep to themselves. But you cannot go back, the First Light said. Everything has changed. Everyone knows what you're capable of. They will never see you the same way again. I know, Elena said sadly. That is one of the things we lost in this war, our anonymity, our ability to be overlooked. For 3,000 years, we were the quiet species that no one worried about. That is gone now, and it will never come back. Then why not take advantage of your new position? Why not use your power to shape the galaxy according to your wishes? Elelina was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but firm, because power is not the same as wisdom. We are powerful, yes, we prove that, but being powerful does not mean we know what is best for the galaxy. It does not mean we have the right to impose our will on others. We have made many mistakes in our history. We have done terrible things to each other in the name of power, in the name of ideology, in the name of gods and nations and causes. We have learned painfully that having the ability to do something does not mean you should do it. She looked directly at the First Light. You have watched species rise and Fall for 50 million years, you have seen. Empires come and go, has any of them ever made the galaxy better by dominating it? Has conquest ever led to lasting peace? The first light flickered in what might have been acknowledgement. No, never. Domination always breeds resentment. Empire always leads to rebellion. The cycle never ends. Then we will not start it. Alina said, we will be powerful in defense, not in offense. We will protect ourselves and help others who need help, but we will not rule. We will not conquer. We will not become what we defeated. Can you truly maintain that position when you have so much power? The temptation to use it must be overwhelming. It is, Alina admitted. That is why we have rules, laws, institutions designed to check our own worst impulses. Humanity has spent thousands of years building systems to prevent ourselves from becoming tyrants. It does not always work, but we keep trying. She smiled slightly. Perhaps that is what makes us different from species like the Valkyrie. They never questioned their right to conquer. They never wondered if their power was justified. They simply took what they wanted because they could. We question ourselves constantly. We doubt, we debate, we argue about whether we are doing the right thing. It makes us slower, more uncertain, sometimes paralyzed by our own thoughts. But it also means that when we finally act, we have usually considered the consequences, and when we make mistakes, we try to learn from them. We do not always succeed, but we try. The first light was silent for a long time. Finally it spoke again. In 50 million years I have seen many powerful species. I have seen them rise and inevitably fall, brought down by enemies or by their own arrogance. I have wondered if any species could ever break the cycle. I do not know if humanity can do it. You are still young, still uncertain, still clears throat. Learning what you are, you may succeed, or you may fail like all the others, but you are the first species I have ever seen that is genuinely trying. The first that has asked the question of whether power should be used rather than simply using it. That gives me hope. Hope is fragile, Alina said. Yes, but it is also necessary. Without hope there is only the endless cycle of rise and fall. Perhaps you will break it, perhaps you will not. Either way, you have earned my respect. That is not something I give easily. Alina bowed slightly. Thank you. We will try to deserve it. Across the galaxy, life slowly returned to normal. The Valkyrie, stripped of their military and their empire, began the long process of redefining themselves. It was not easy. For thousands of years their entire society had been built around conquest and domination. Without that purpose, many of them struggled to find meaning. But some of them, following the example of Hierarchan Zethrix, began to look for new ways to exist. They studied other species. They learned about cooperation instead of subjugation. They discovered that there were other forms of strength besides the ability to destroy. It would take generations, perhaps centuries, but the possibility of change was there, planted like a seed in soil that had been barren for too long. On Earth, in the chambers beneath Switzerland, where humanity's secret leaders had met to wage war, a different meeting was taking place. Admiral Kenji Tanaka stood before the council, presenting his final report on the demobilization of the grave fleets. First through fourth fleets have returned to dormant status, he said. Their crews have been debriefed and returned to civilian life. The fifth fleet is completing its assignments in former Velari territory and will be dormant within 3 months, and the weapons? Asked one of the council members. Secured, the null lances, the cascades. The whispers, all of our advanced systems have been placed in storage. The facilities are hidden, the access codes are protected, and the only people who know the locations are in this room. Good, the council member leaned back. Her chair, I never want to see those weapons used again. I never want to give another order that ends lives on that scale. None of us do, Tanaka agreed, but we must be realistic. The galaxy knows we exist now. They know what we can do. There may be others who decide to test us to see if our power was real or just a one-time surprise. Then we will be ready, another council member said. We're ready for the Valkyrie. We will be ready for whatever comes next. Yes, Tanaka said, but I hope we never have to prove it again. I hope this was the last war humanity ever fights. He looked around the table at the men and women who had guided humanity through its greatest crisis. We won, we survived, we even managed to do some good in the aftermath, but the cost was high, not just in lives lost, not just in resources spent, but in what we had to become to win. We woke the dragon. We reminded ourselves what we are capable of. That is a dangerous thing. History teaches us that once violence starts, it is hard to stop. Once a species learns to enjoy killing, it begins to find excuses to kill more. We must be vigilant against that. We must remember why we chose peace in the first place. We must teach our children that the grave fleets exist not as a source of pride, but as a last resort, something to be used only when all other options have failed. He stood up straighter. War is over. Now the harder work begins. The work of staying peaceful, the work of choosing every day to be better than our instincts, the work of keeping the dragon asleep. The council murmured agreement. They understood. They had all felt the pull of power during the war, the seductive whisper that said they could use their strength to reshape the galaxy. They had resisted that whisper, but they knew how dangerous it was. The meeting is adjourned, the head of the council said. Go home, see your families, remember what you were fighting for, and remember that the real victory is not winning the war. The real victory is building a peace that lasts. One by one, they filed out of the chamber and returned to their normal lives. Soldiers became civilians. Warriors became parents and teachers and shopkeepers. The machinery of war was put away, hidden once again behind the mask of peace, and life went on. Years passed, then decades. The galaxy settled into a new equilibrium. The former Valkyrie territories slowly recovered. The conquered species rebuilt. New trade routes were established. New alliances formed. New problems arose and were solved through diplomacy instead of violence. Humanity remained what it had always been, the quiet neighbors who kept to themselves. They traded fairly, cooperated peacefully, and rarely made waves. The grave fleet stayed dormant, their locations known only to a handful of people. The weapons stayed in storage, unused and hopefully unneeded. But everyone remembered, every species in the galaxy remembered what had happened when the Valkyrie attacked humanity. They remembered the two-word response to the declaration of war. They remembered the battles that had destroyed the greatest armada in galactic history. They remembered that the quiet neighbors had proven themselves to be something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined, and They were careful, very careful, when disputes arose with humanity. They were settled peacefully. When conflicts threatened human interests, they were resolved through negotiation. When anyone felt the urge to threaten human space, they remembered what had happened to the Valkyrie and thought better of it. In a way, it was exactly what humanity had wanted: peace through strength, safety through the knowledge that attacking them would be catastrophically unwise. The dragon slept, but everyone knew it was there, and no one wanted to be the one to wake it. 50 years after the war, Ambassador Elena Vasquez, now old and gray, was invited to address the Galactic Concord. It was a rare honor, given to only the most respected members. She accepted it as her final public duty before retirement. She stood before thousands of alien delegates, beings of every shape and size and origin, and spoke words that would be remembered for millennia. 50 years ago, she began. The Valkyrie Dominion declared war on humanity. They expected us to be easy prey. They were wrong. We defeated them not because we wanted war, but because we had no choice. We fought with weapons we had hoped never to use, revealed capabilities we had hidden for 3,000 years. We won completely and decisively, and then we stopped. We offered terms instead of extinction. We helped rebuild what the Valkyrie had destroyed. We returned to our quiet lives as peaceful neighbors. Some of you wondered why. Some of you thought we were fools, giving up power that we had earned through battle. Some of you waited for us to reveal our true intentions, to begin the conquest that you were sure was coming. It never came, and it never will. She looked around the chamber at the faces watching her. Humanity chose peace not because we are weak, but because we are strong. Strong enough to control ourselves, strong enough to resist the temptation of empire, strong enough to remember that the measure of a species is not what it can destroy, but what it chooses to create. We are not perfect. We have made mistakes, and we will make more. We are still learning, still growing, still trying to be better than our worst instincts, but we believe that peace is possible. We believe that different species can coexist without dominating each other. We believe that the cycle of empire and conquest can be broken if enough people are willing to try. That is what humanity stands for. Not the power to destroy, but the choice not to. Not the strength of weapons, but the strength of will. Not the ability to conquer, but the determination to coexist. She straightened her aging shoulders. The grave fleets still exist. They are still hidden, still ready, still waiting. They will be activated again if humanity is ever threatened with extinction. We will not allow ourselves to be destroyed, but we hope, truly and deeply hope, that they will never be needed again. We hope that the galaxy will learn from what happened to the Valkyrie. We hope that someday the grave fleets can be dismantled entirely, because no one will ever again be foolish enough to attack us. Until that day, we will continue to be what we have always tried to be: good neighbors, peaceful traders, cooperative partners, the quiet species that ask nothing but to be left alone. Her voice dropped slightly, carrying a weight of memory and hard-won wisdom. But remember this, all of you: our kindness is a choice, our peace is a gift, our restraint is something we offer because we believe it is right, not because we are incapable of doing otherwise. We have shown what we can do when we are forced to fight. We have proven that the quiet neighbors have teeth, and we have demonstrated that. Those teeth are very, very sharp. We hope never to use them again, but we will, if we must, remember that and treat us accordingly. She bowed slightly to the assembly. Thank you for listening. May the peace endure. She stepped down from the podium and walked slowly out of the chamber. Behind her, thousands of alien voices murmured in every language the galaxy had ever known. They had listened, they had understood, and they would remember. Outside, the stars shone, cold and beautiful in the eternal darkness of space. Somewhere out there, human worlds orbited, human suns filled with human families living human lives. Somewhere out there, the grave fleets waited in their hidden dimensions, silent guardians of a species that hoped never to need them. Somewhere out there, the future stretched out like an endless road full of possibilities, both wonderful and terrible. Humanity had survived its greatest test. They had proven themselves to be something unique in the galaxy, a species of predators who had chosen to be civilized, species that could destroy anyone who threatened them but preferred to build. Instead, the 3,000-year peace had ended. A new peace had begun, and under humanity's watchful eye, it would last far longer than the old one ever had, because now everyone understood the truth. The quiet neighbors were not weak. They had never been weak. They were just very, very patient and very, very good at war.